All right, talking about these collectors. I pulled this up real quick because it's in my notes. It's about this one. Lycoming V-band couplings. Let's see, I don't want to do this. Machine flange, both flanges. You got to do all this. Press the V-band couplings, all the flanges. Torque. Tighten the coupling to a 70% torque value. Tap the outer surface of the coupling, the rubber mount, distribute the band tension. Check the torque with the wrench and continue tightening until specified torque is reached. Repeat as step 5 until torque reading stabilizes. Do not over torque. So get to beat on something with a hammer. It actually tells you right there, beat on it with a hammer. So, yeah. But then there's ADs on these things and all kinds of stuff. So, all right. So the collector style. One, they're used on radials. All radials are going to have that one. Gas used on radial engines. This one uses slip joints. That are loose. When cold. Why is that not a problem for a radial engine?
That they're loose when they're cold?
Yeah. Well, all of our engines are pretty much air cooled.
Well,
Yeah, it's a circle, can't fall apart.
How come we're not worried about carbon monoxide poisoning with that?
Because there's no ways.
because there's ways. We don't have no carb heat.
There's carb heat. It's got a carburetor.
It's not where the straw now?
Not worried about carbon monoxide poisoning.
Oh, and that one?
Yeah.
All the exhaust is straight out.
It's this big old radial out in the. I mean, what's the cabin like? Open cockpit.
Yeah.
You know. So, I mean, I guess you would be in something that's tightly cowled, but this particular one. Yeah. All right. Use slip joints that are loose when cold. Let me see. This keeps exhaust. This keeps exhaust from cracking. When engine expands, from heat, or contracts when it gets cold. So you got the contraction, expansion.
When they heat up, do they kind of cinch up a little bit?
Oh yeah, they get real tight. So you get it real nice and hot, just go up there and grab it and try and shake it. First thing you'll do is burn the living crap out of yourself, and then you won't do that anymore.
No, we're loving it.
The ever-loving heck out of you. These are mine. So install with a coating of anti-seize. A-N-T-I-S-E-I-Z. Anti-seize. So when you're putting these on anything, any exhaust system, and you're putting the joints together, man, put some C5 on it or some anti-seize, so you can actually get them back apart someday. Otherwise, they
Same thing apply with titanium? Like the titanium is any
I don't know about titanium exhaust systems that we have.
Maybe it's just experimental stuff.
Maybe,
It's not what I feel. We use
but I would. I don't know. I would definitely consider it. Talk to whoever made it. Hey, I wouldn't go throwing chemicals at metal if I didn't know anything about it, but I definitely put some anti-seize on these older systems because otherwise they don't come apart. And when you have to get them apart, like you have to remove a cylinder, now you're sitting there with a hammer and a block of wood beating on the exhaust trying to get it apart, and it's just not fun. And then lubricate with mouse milk periodically.
we just brush past that?
That's our next class is milking mice.
Yeah, hold up.
Mouse milk. I didn't make it up. This is how you get it right there.
He is coming for that one.
Something new every day.
In my class, you will, don't you? You did not wake up this morning thinking you were going to see something like that.
Yeah, what 4 weeks do we get to do that?
Oh, you can do it anytime you want. You just gotta. You can mouse milk, skunk milk, possum milk. Yeah, we got it all here. So these collector systems are used on radial engines, and then as opposed to the short stack, obviously we have higher horsepower engines.
So you're lubricating the slip joints?
Yep. And anything with a turbo is going to have a collector type system. All right, some maintenance points, which I just did anyway. What do I have here? Let me see. This is my important point. Consider an exhaust failure a potentially life-threatening event. Why? We already covered it.
Carbon monoxide.
Exhaust gas leak can get into the cabin, even if it's not under the heat muff and it's just somewhere else. Let's say you got an exhaust pipe coming out this bottom of the cowling, but it's got a crack that far up into it. Well, now you got exhaust coming out that much further up than it used to come out. And then it's going to be near the cabin, and it'll go up the steering rod boots or some other thing, get into little nooks and crannies into the aircraft and give you carbon monoxide poisoning, which is very, very bad. Aside from the carbon monoxide poisoning, what was the other reason? Fire, okay. How often do you think we should, let me see, let's put that CO poisoning and fire. How often should you think we should inspect under the shrouds?
Annual or every 100 days?
Inspect under shroud at least every 100 hours / annual. So what if you only flew an aircraft for 25 hours that year? Would you still look under the shroud? There you go. At least every year or 100 hours, whichever comes first. Some systems are every 25 hours. How do we check it?
Taking it off. Oh, that.
Well, one, visually.
Do you have to? I guess it doesn't really matter if your exhaust valves are open. You're blowing your.
Yeah, it works just fine. With the exhaust valves open, closed, it doesn't matter.
Just,
Just
I guess I'm saying like, I guess clean your filter or your vacuum or something like that.
yeah, you know, and he has a very valid point, and I think about that before I just go grab some stupid vacuum cleaner and shove it up my exhaust. If it's got a bunch of dirt and stuff in the vacuum cleaner and it's always blowing dirt out, guess what you're blowing into your engine? So yeah, you want a nice clean filter vacuum cleaner. Some shops have dedicated ones just for doing this. You don't vacuum the floor with it. And first you start with a good visual inspection. Nice light, flashlight, look at every bolt, every joint, every weld joint. That's where it's going to get a failure. Visually, and then with compressed air. Can you use shop air? 110 psi. You really can. I've done it many times. Just take your the blue nozzle you guys are messing with, right? So the output is smaller than that, and the exhaust is this big around. So you just wrap a bunch of rags around it and shove it up in there. So it's just rags. I mean, if it's too much pressure, blow the rag out, and then just run it. It leaks enough that it won't hurt it. So you with compressed air, usually a vacuum though, with compressed air and soap. What kind of soap?
Dawn.
Sure, Dawn works. Not a bar of soap, just for those of you who can't visualize this, because if I don't say that, I can see some of you guys out there rubbing some dial across it. Huh?
Liquid soap.
Yes, liquid soap.
What
Soap,
does it have to
soap
be?
and water in a little spray bottle.
I remember seeing something one time a long time ago about how Dawn, for some reason, doesn't break down rubber. So that's why you can use it. They always, I remember always.
It's
seeing
safe for
it.
ducks.
Yeah, well, that's why they use it. No, there's
Oh.
some, it's like a reason. There's
Okay.
like a reason for that. It actually like breaks.
Yeah.
I don't remember, but that was something that it's like instead of palm olive or something.
Okay.
It's a different one.
What was the one on the Christmas story that the kid went blind with in his little thing? It was the Life Boy. You guys suck. It's the movie You'll Shoot Your Eye Out, Kid. He has a little, yeah, and he has a little fantasy thing where he went blind because his mom put the soap in his mouth, and it was the Life. I think it was Life Boy.
Oh.
Was it Life Boy? All right. So with this, especially check welds. That's where it's prone to go. Welds and clamps. For check. Internal baffles. Those cones I told you about, baffles in the muffler, if they break and cover up the outlet for the exhaust, then the aircraft engine cannot exhaust, and so it will quit. So that's a bad thing.
Say that again.
If a baffle breaks inside of the exhaust system, baffle break and it blocks off part of the outlet, so gases cannot get out. Just a little bit squeaks out, then you have too much back pressure and the engine won't run. It stops running. Check internal baffles. We see failure of internal baffles. Can shut down an engine. Due to back pressure. We talked about the V-band clamps. Use caution. Follow the instructions. There's also an AD on those. So treat V-band clamps with the utmost of care. Do I need to show you the picture of that fiery airplane again? That was a mechanic who did not put a V-band clamp on correctly. So it's really a bad day when you're watching the news and that was the airplane you just released. So that's what happens when you don't take stuff like that serious. And you're like, what's the worst that could happen? It's just an exhaust. It's not like it's going to make the engine die. Well, you're wrong about that. Yeah. Let's see. Never use galvanized or zinc plated tools. I don't even know what those look like. Never use.
But cheap as fuck.
Oh, is that what it is?
I'm guessing. I mean, what?
Galvanized, yeah.
The Galvy tool? I don't know. Fucking shit.
Or lead pencil, which are really graphite pencils.
Oh, I think we talked about this in turbines where it's like you can't mark a combustion chamber with pencil at all because it'll make a hot spot. It'll crack right there.
Yep. So they say the same thing about this. So that'd be a good question, but you would know the answer. Where's the only place you should really use a lead pencil on an aircraft? Ah, no, I wasn't thinking logbook. No, definitely not the logbook. Don't don't fill your freaking logbooks out with lead pencils.
Change it.
I know. What happens if I change my mind? Nah, fabric covering. When you do fabric aircraft, you use lead pencils. You don't use ink pens. Okay. Oh. Installation. You're like, oh, now you tell me about installation. I'm on 5 or 6. 5. About to tell you something you're never going to find. You're going to have a hard time finding the answer to. All right. Installation. How do we install it? Standard answer.
Right.
way.
Correctly. By the book.
Per Kevin's instructions.
Per manufacturer's instructions. Where are you going to find the instructions for installing an exhaust?
In the airframe book.
Ooh, very good. Airframe manual. Why not the overhaul manual for the engine?
Airframe is
It's an airframe item.
It's an airframe item.
Engines can be used on multiple airframes, but they have different exhausts.
Yep, different exhaust. All right. So use proper gaskets. For one, use proper gaskets. There are different styles of gaskets. There are these on the right. There's even others. So this one on the right is called spiral round or no blow. And I think that's what you guys are using on the engines that you're installing across the street, the no blow, right? There, you can reuse them over and over. Then there's these ones on the left, which are made out of very, very thin stainless steel, like 016 or less. And you take, and so they have a little bead, that bead right there. So it just kind of goes up like that. That's all it is. And so when they first came out, everybody had different ideas. You know, one person said, oh, no, they go this way.
Oh, yeah.
So you get a bead on the top and on the bottom, and you fill the middle with high temp silicone. So they can make a sandwich and put it on there. And then someone says, no, it doesn't go that way. Nobody ever said the other way. And then some people said, no, oops. You have the big spoon, the little spoon. So they interlock. So the correct answer is this. Beaded style, use 2 with beads interlocked. Bead goes towards exhaust. So I actually have it upside down. So we go down this way. This is the cylinder. This is the exhaust. And smooth side towards cylinder. Retorque all exhaust nuts after 25 hours of operation. That is Lycoming Tactics, page 98. So this is the right way to do it. I
So
don't
you
know why I
actually
did.
do need 2 per cylinder.
Don't know why I did that. You need 2 per cylinder.
Damn. You never
What is-
guessed that. How do you know?
What am I touching?
Why an
It's,
exhaust gasket?
that's the correct one. There we go. Got that?
Sure.
Okay. Use proper gaskets. Let's see. Proper gaskets and nuts. What kind of nut would you use?
Oh, it's those big old brass nuts.
The long brass nuts. Can you use the standard AN bolt nut?
No.
Standard AN nut
No.
with the nylon core? Sure. Why not?
Maybe the high temp.
It's gonna burn up the temperature reading of the.
Can you use the same one that doesn't have the nylon that has the cuts that are kind of pushed in?
No.
Yeah, some of the exhaust
Yeah,
fans are like that.
Yeah,
They're like all
They rated
metal.
it- they rated it to what,
Parts
500?
manual say?
It does not say those two. Why not?
They're only.
Because
the high temp one is rated up to like 600 degrees.
450.
Yeah.
So regular AN hardware is up to 450 degrees. Is that going to reach over 450?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So people do that. And they'll put those on. I've seen them use nylon lock nuts, and you look up there in the nylon, you can see it had dripped out and ran over the
But
stud.
some of those exhausts look like those, no? But they're like proprietary.
Yeah, they look like it. They're different. They're stainless or something. And if they use a standard high temp lock nut and hardware, you go to take it off and it just crumbles in your nut in your wrench. It's like, what the heck was that? You look down, it's just like powder. It's gone because so use the right nuts. Most of the time, like Lycoming, they use a washer, lock washer, and then it's got a plain nut. It's like stainless steel. The smaller Continentals use very tall brass nuts. So use whatever it says. Let's see, install and operate engine in temp to temp. Install and operate engine to temp. So run it up, reposition to correct any leaks. What's a leak look like?
Sooty
Trail.
hot spot, like discoloration.
Black or gray soot. Why is it? Why could it be gray?
Lean.
It's all that lead.
Oh.
And then
Is it
retorque.
a white exhaust?
It's because it's hot.
Is that like some indication of you running lean or something like that?
No,
That's not true.
it's just you get that lead no matter what.
Joey, your hat is.
Bring it back, bring it back.
Retorque and rerun as needed. I don't have this in my notes, but a lot of exhaust couplings, they have flanges. And you bolt them up with springs. So you'll have a bolt that'll go through, and springs, and then a nut. And you have to measure the springs, the compression of the springs, so it's allowed to expand and contract. So,
Oh, that's why.
yeah.
Yeah.
It is, yeah.
I don't know if it's like a car. My car did. I've looked at my car, didn't have that kind of stuff.
Every car ever done it.
The Corolla
does. On the cat, especially.
High performance Corolla here.
Was that all my slides for that? Let me see. Yep. All right, that brings me to
Turbos.
okay. So we got to get. I don't think it's my notes here, but we got to get one thing straight. A couple things straight. So these words are used oddly in aviation. So anytime you see the word turbo in the system, that means it has an exhaust gas driven compressor. And in the true sense of words, a turbocharger. We'll talk about what turbocharging is. And so when I say turbocharging or turbo, it's the same thing. Then there's supercharging, which we'll use in the traditional sense, which is some sort of mechanically driven compressor.
It's driven by the engine.
By the engine gears, not by the exhaust. So turbo is exhaust driven. Supercharging is mechanical belt gear, but some manufacturers call it turbo supercharging.
CSIO.
It is not both things. It is a turbocharger that supercharges. So it's not two things.
That was the old name for it. The
All
turbo supercharger.
turbocharging is supercharging. Not all supercharging is turbocharging.
Yeah, that's almost true.
It's like, what is it?
So,
Square is rectangle, but rectangle is square.
okay. So just keep that in mind. So we get an engine that's a TSIO, turbo, supercharged, injected opposed. Is that two things or one thing?
One thing.
It's one thing. So it just has a turbocharger. So, and then we'll talk more about different types. So why do we want a turbocharger? What's the benefit? It is, tricks the engine. You know, it's going to add power. Personally, I don't want a turbochargered airplane.
It normalizes at high altitude.
If somebody else wants to pay for my maintenance, I really do want one. That'd be really sweet.
We will all work on it. I'll pay for it.
But if I got to pay for my own, I don't want to. It's one more thing to break, one more problem. So, all right, why turbocharging, and why is it more important in aircraft than it would be in cars? Cars, you can make smaller and smaller engines that perform the same. Well, I'm getting off into my opinion. If you're not actually using the turbocharger, really, it's just kind of there, and you have it boosted the engine. Then you're just like kind of running it down there low, and you're not using much fuel. So I guess it'd be more fuel efficient. Is that fair to say? I'm looking at Duke. Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
What's that? What's that?
It's not anti-lag.
Huh? You what? I know. Yeah, I do too. I just took my car in for the 20,000 mile oil or tire change. And like, hey, I need new tires soon. I'm like, what? These things are good for 40,000 miles. All right, don't tell my wife that. Okay, air. Why? Because air and density. That's what we're going to talk about. You are my density. What's her name? Elaine? Elaine? No,
Eileen?
Eileen. Is it Eileen?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I just thought of a song.
No, that's Come On, Eileen.
Yeah, I know.
It was Back to the Future. Okay. Why? Because sea level. What am I going to write here? Sea level pressure on standard days. Sea level. Thank you. I know. It's so close. Sea level pressure on a standard day is what? Oh, what standard day? How many degrees?
Oh,
15.
It is not 29.9 degrees. 59 degrees Fahrenheit is how many?
15 degrees centigrade.
29.92
Inches of mercury.
that'd be Hg, inches of mercury, or
1013.2.
I don't want millibars. 14.7
Celsius, millibars?
psi. Can I round up to 30? So,
For us, you could.
okay, we can round up to 30 Hg. That way I can save time and thank you. All right, we talk about this guy here. I don't know why, but why not? We'll go for it. Boyle's Law, named after
Dr. Law.
Albert Law. Thank you, everybody. Somebody said you pulled that with Phil. You did.
Yeah, yeah.
Ow.
We were all back here like.
1013.2.
Come back here during second year and hear relive all
Write that
the,
down.
tell the same joke.
Same jokes.
Two best quotes.
No.
It's a combined.
No. Any sample of gas, any sample of gas, the volume is inversely proportional to the absolute pressure to the absolute pressure if the temp is kept constant. If temp is kept constant. Why did I write that?
I have no idea.
Me neither. All right, in any sample of gas, so I don't mean like that, like a sample of gas, like in a container, the volume is inversely proportional to the pressure. So the volume is inversely. So if I increase the pressure, the volume is smaller. Okay. What if I increase the temperature? Then the volume is larger. Weighs the same, right? Let's see. I don't know. There's a point behind writing that, which I'm not totally sure, but I will leave it there. There you go. Just going to put that there and leave it there. I hate it when people say that. That's funnier, but I'm just going to leave this here. 13 cubic feet. Cubic feet of air at 14.7 psi weighs 1 pound. So 13 cubic feet. So 13 cubic feet right here. That's, for those of you who don't remember basic electricity math, that's a cubic foot, and 13 of them weighs 1 pound. Let's see. At 10 psi, psi went what?
Down.
10 psi. You need 15 cubic feet to equal 1 pound. So what happened to our air? We dropped the pressure, and now we need
More
Increase
volume.
more volume to get the same pound.
I like the second one, the numbers are better.
Why is this relevant to us, this pound stuff?
There it is.
Think about fuel. Fuel ratios
Oh, you need.
is really supposed to be pound for pound,
Yeah, 15 pounds a year.
right? So we're thinking about that. 3, the same cubic feet. Let me see, same 15 cubic feet, 20 psi. We'll just put it this, 20 psi at 15 cubic feet equals 2 pounds. So if we increase the pressure, we're going to get more weight of air. If we get more weight of air, we add more fuel. We add more air, more fuel, we're going to get more power. All right. So that's a good thing. We keep adding air pressure, air pressure, air pressure. We can add fuel to our 15-to-1 ratio or 12-to-1 ratio. We're going to get more power. Well, but the opposite is true. As altitude increases, pressure and density decrease. And what is the goal with an airplane? To look cool. No,
Yes.
got to go up. Well, why? Why do we want to go high? And if you think about it, if we get the higher we go, the less air density we have, the less performance the air is, the less performance the engine's going to give. So the higher we go, the less horsepower we get,
Way less drag. Way less drag.
way less drag.
You can bomb it.
I don't.
You know, but that's what the whole
That's required power to go certain
Right. Yeah, you want to get above the flak. That's the whole thing.
Yeah.
Anybody see that?
Yes.
Master's Z, I just finished it. As altitude, pressure, and density decrease. Let's see. At sea level, oh, this is just an example for fun. At sea level, we'll call that 100%. So 100%. We're going to talk about a Pratt and Whitney 985 that is 450 horsepower at sea level. Now, this is probably a really bad example because if anybody knows a Pratt & Whitney 985, you would know that it has an internal supercharger, but let's pretend like it doesn't. So it's sea level, 100% power. We're going to get 100% power, and that would be 450 horsepower. All right, so at 10,000 feet, we're going to have 75% of the pressure available, and now we're down to
75%.
oops, I wrote the wrong thing. We're at 337.5 horsepowers. How much did we lose?
That's it.
25%.
Loss of 112.5 horsepower by going up to 10,000 feet. That's not that high. At 20, now we're going to pretend like it can go this high. At 20,000 feet, if it could, we would have 50% horsepower. So that'd be 225. At 30,000 feet, not going to get there, we would have only 33% of the horsepower left, which would be 148 horsepower. So this Pratt & Whitney 985 9-cylinder radial engine that started out at 450 horsepower, by the time we get to 20,000 feet, it has the same horsepower as a 182. By the time we get to 30,000 feet, we got still more horsepower than a Luscombe. You got the horsepower of a 172 at sea level. If we could make it to 40,000, which you can't, you'd have 25% horsepower, and you'd still have more horsepower than a Luscombe, but about as much as a 152. All right.
We just kept going.
God, it's kicking.
All right. So obviously we got to do something about that. You're not gonna go high. Well, what else we got here? Well, unfortunately, heat has a negative effect as well. Oh, this is the thing here. Charles' law.
What's the balloon guy?
The balloon guy?
Right?
Well, not the scale.
Oh, is that the scale?
Charles is the temperature.
No, he's the one that came up with the wager about God.
Charles Darwin.
Pascal's wager?
I don't know if Charles Darwin.
Take a philosophy class, man.
I did. I got a B.
You did not discuss Pascal's wager?
Talked about that guy.
Pascal, well, I won't do it justice, but it's basically Pascal's wager was he figured that, this is off the topic, that if there is no God and you don't believe, you've lost nothing. But if there is a God and you don't believe, you lose everything. So that was his wager. So
I
take
believe
that.
God now.
So there's only one, like, win it, hedge your bet was his point. Hedge your bet, you can't go wrong. If a temp of a given, he's the patron saint of Gavin. I get it now. Of a given quantity of gas is raised and the pressure is held constant, what must happen?
Will expand.
The volume has to increase. So raise, the pressure is held constant, the gas will expand. In proportion to the absolute temperature, absolute temp. In other words, hot air will expand, hot air will expand, but density which is weight, will remain the same. Where do we see this?
Hot air balloons.
Okay.
Used all the words.
This is why carb heat shows a loss of RPM. You just lost power because you got hot air. So excessive. Okay, so we're going to talk about compressors, turbochargers, superchargers. They're just compressors. They're going to take air and compress it into compressed air. That's what compressors do. But when you compress air, what happens? Temperature goes up. In fact, I'm reading this book that Larry gave me about Rudolf Diesel, and his whole thing that got him going was a compression igniter. Have you guys ever seen one of these? I looked it up on. I'm going to get one because it's really cool. They're like $15 on Amazon.
Oh, yeah.
You put like a little like flash paper and bang.
So it's just a syringe. I guess they're about that big, fully expanded. Yeah. So it's a syringe, but you can't shoot anything with it. So it's got a plunger and a tube, and you take a piece of cotton and you put it down in there, and it's like a primer. And if you push on it real slow, nothing happens. But if you slam it down, the cotton instantly ignites and burns up. It's like really cool. Yeah, it just gets, but you have to slam it down because it's if you do it slow, the theory being that the heat is still there, but it's escaping through the plexiglass sides at a rate fast enough that the internal doesn't get hot. But if you slam it down, that doesn't have time to dissipate the heat, so it burns up the cotton. So
Three things.
I'll have to get one. Yes.
I thought you said hot air lowers the air density.
No. Oh, lowers density. But hot air will expand, but
In the same volume,
Right, I wanna make
the
sure.
density will be the same.
yeah,
So you have a given amount of air, you heat it up, the volume is
Yes.
the same,
yes,
and the volume is bigger, but the density is the same.
yes.
Yeah.
But he's thinking about like, your intake doesn't change size. If you put hot in there, air in there,
There's no second.
is that what you're thinking?
I don't know, I'm under the impression that car heat will lower the air density.
Well, because you're taking
It will.
It lowers the density, means the density of air gets less. And so we want to be careful how we say it because it can get confusing. The air packed in, tight, density, you're right, like lead is very dense metal. That's good if the air is all packed in and very dense, high density. Okay, so we can say high density is good. But if I said high density altitude, that's bad. That's two different things. So high density means all the molecules of air packed in together. Low density means they're all kind of spread out. So, here's one molecule, here's another. That's bad. But from a pilot perspective or thinking about it, when we talk about the air density altitude. So I listened to the AWAS, the Automatic Weather Reporting Station here in the middle of summer, and it says, caution, density altitude, 3,000 feet. That's a high density, meaning high altitude. That's bad because our density of the air went down, so their density altitude went up. Follow? Yeah, it's like a higher altitude. Is that maybe how you got those crossed? Yeah, sure, whatever. Yeah,
Maybe it's the inverse of it that's confusing, because you said when pressure is held constant. but-
Pressure is held constant.
Right,
Okay.
but wouldn't the inverse that if the volume was held constant, wouldn't the pressure increase?
Did I write it backwards? If a temp of a given quantity of gas is raised, the temperature is raised,
Exactly.
got hotter, so what's it going to do?
Expand.
Expand out.
Expand out. But how did the weight change?
Didn't.
It did.
It didn't. So now it is,
so it's bigger volume in the same way.
It's a larger volume.
Yeah.
For
in other words, hot air will expand, but the density, weight, remains the same.
Yeah.
I always do just like try and simplify it as much as possible. If you have
So do I.
If you have 100 air molecules,
Yes?
you heat it up. Now they're expanded to this much volume.
Yes.
You still have 100 air molecules.
Yes, the way the same.
Yeah.
And then you gotta think about if you're putting that through your intake, how long is it gonna take for all that big expanded air to go through the intake?
Takes longer.
Takes a lot longer than if you have a tiny little pack of it, you can just.
Toss it right in there.
But yet at the same time, the carburetor doesn't notice that. It's like, oh, look, here comes all this air. It's the same. So it's bad. All right. Well, that's it for tonight anyway.